I've planed off the excess glue, but I've also taken off a bit of extra material of the wood on the top surface of this inwale. And the reason for that is that I need the wood to be completely open on the surface pores. I want to apply a solution of vinegar with some steel wool that's been soaking in it for a couple of days. That's going to give me a nice contrasting color on these spacing blocks. The process is called ebonizing. There's a reaction that happens between the steel in the vinegar and certain wood species, and that turns it a very nice dark black color. It will look almost like ebony, maybe not quite as dark. I'm doing this ebonizing experiment outside in the sun so that you can get a good look at how the coloring kicks in. Sorry about the noise. I've also got samples of oak and mahogany. I think it's some African mahogany and walnut. This is what the vinegar looks like after a couple of days in a closed container. I have found that if you leave the container open, any metal inside tends to eventually turn to a very rusty color. It does add a little bit more of a brown color to the stain, although I found that more on the mahogany and Maranti varieties, not so much on oak or walnut. So for the control samples, I'm just going to dip everything in the normal greenish solution, and while I work, I'll set the camera on time lapse and you can get an idea of how quickly the coloring kicks in. You'll notice that oak is definitely the most reactive, so let's get that going. For my inwales, I'm using a combination of the rusty solution as well as some fresh solution. The fresh solution does have more power to give a nice black color, but I am quite keen to add a little bit of a brown tinge for my spacer blocks as well. This is my solution of old rusty vinegar as well as a nice fresh batch. My ebonizing solution has had time to dry completely now. These were the 3 samples initially treated with the fresh solution. I've given them a clean and wiped on a little bit of Danish oil just to give you an idea of what they will look like when properly finished. You notice the walnut has the most solid black and the most ebony-like appearance, even more so than the oak. That's because on oak it's very difficult to get the solution right into every last little pore, and you always get these little streaky pieces of light wood shining through. It's the same problem with walnut, but because the pores are so small and fine, you don't really notice it. So if I ever want something to look exactly like ebony, I would rather use walnut. The problem with walnut and oak is that the stain forms a very opaque, flat layer on the surface, and any luster or chatoyance that you might have had in the grain is lost. When you use mahogany or Maranti, that is not the case. These are 2 pieces of spare spacer blocks that I've treated. This one was treated with the rusty solution, same as on the inwale. This one was treated with a fresh solution, and this bottom half was given a second coating after the first had dried. I've noticed that regardless of whether it's a fresh or old solution, you always end up with a bit of a chalky residue on the surface. And my only guess is that it's some form of metal salt left in the vinegar. You can clearly see if I rub this, it's a very powdery residue and a very rusty color in this case. I've also prepared a sample of Meranti that has beautiful grain, and I've given it half a coating and a layer of fresh varnish, and hopefully this will help to demonstrate that with Meranti and mahoganies you don't lose any of that beautiful chatoyance, that effect that the light has as it changes incidence with the wood. You can see that straight through the stain, which is very nice, because now you have best of both. You have a nice dark wood, but you still have that incredible depth and warmth that you typically associate with mahogany.